that hot air coming out of Washington. That's my 2 cents. Well, with just hours to go before a threatened default, the debt ceiling has been raised, the president signing it into law after the Senate voted 74-26. Now, one of those against the bill with us now, Republican Senator Dan Coats from Indiana. Senator, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, tell us why you voted no on this bill.
Didn't go nearly far enough, didn't address the underlying issues that we all know are there and have to be addressed. I think they saw this as far too little, and I think the markets are reflecting that. There are underlying financial issues here that's putting the United States in a position of real serious credit unworthiness, and it needs to be addressed, and the Congress took a pass on it. I thought we should have done much more.
Much more deeper cuts. We've got $2.4 trillion in spending cuts over 10 years baked in here. What would be the right number?
Well, listen, most people said it ought to be about $4 trillion to really make a difference. That ought to be the floor. But in addition to that, they said we have to address the entitlement reforms and the tax code reforms. None of that was mandated or even addressed in this particular bill. And unless the special committee comes forward and recommends that, and I doubt that they will, we still are not dealing with the root problem.
All right. There's been a lot of conversation about whether taxes should be increased and if they could be increased under this plan. Left and the right, at odds over this. I was listening to Neil Cavuto's show just before this one, and on that show, you said if the president proposed new tax hikes, that the stock market could fall as much as 1,000 to 2,000 points. Now, if that happens, Senator, that would be a break as big as the break right after Lehman fell, September 29th, 2008, when stocks fell 777 points. It would be bigger than that. Why do you think there would be such a big sell-off when we haven't seen that much of a sell-off in the past for events that were much more catastrophic?
Well, first of all, nobody should make a stock investment on the basis of my advice, because I'm just a layman here. But my belief is that when the President of the United States comes out and everybody knows the problem is spending and simply says, well, no, the reason they're having problems is that we don't have enough taxes coming into Washington. This guy blew the lid off of spending for 2.5 years, made things much worse than what he inherited, and then comes along and says, I want you to pay for my spending. And then when the tortuous process of getting to this program that cuts some spending comes right back out and says, now we got to go after the revenues and hike the taxes. At a time when unemployment is rising 9.2% and holding at least and maybe rising, and the stock market is indicating that the economy is in poor shape, you come along and raise taxes on people. It's just exactly the wrong thing to do, and I think the market's reflecting the president's words.
We've had a massive sell-off already, and the market's saying that they're focusing on the economy and there's nothing being done to help the economy. What should be done?
Well, I mentioned two things. We need comprehensive tax reform because their companies are not competitive worldwide, and we need to export more, and that will put more people back to work. Secondly, we need tax code reform because we're spending a lot of money on special interest breaks that shouldn't be spent there, and we don't have the growth positions to move in place to move this economy forward and get more people back to work. That's two things. But the third thing is we just have to continue eliminating the excess and the duplication that is spending in Washington. And finally, I think ultimately we have to put in place a balanced budget amendment so we never get in this position again.
Well, I wanted you to respond to something Tim Geithner had to say today, I believe. He's talking about the possibility that the economy could tip into recession again. Here's Tim Geithner. Oh, sorry, it's not. It's a quote, which I'll read to you, not video. He says, I think confidence here was absolutely very damaged by the spectacle they've seen in Washington of a significant number of elected officials in this country threatening default to the point where, pardon me, sir, to the point where it could cause a double dip, the Treasury Secretary has asked. And Geithner says, I don't think that risk right now is very significant. You know, the United States is a very strong, very resilient economy. Senator, do you agree with that, or are we going to see another recession here?
I think we risk another recession, and I think we risk that because the markets and those who analyze this have understood that we have not done enough. We have not taken that significant step forward that everybody was calling for. It's interesting that the White House kept telling us, if we avoid this default, the markets will cheer and soar. so we end up passing something that avoids the default, and they drop. People better get a grasp of reality here. We've run our country deeply into debt.
Yeah.
It's causing major negative consequences, and we need to address the root cause of that if we're going to get out of this.
A long way to go, that's for darn sure. But one of the prescriptions here is a super Congress in this bill. And, you know, I have big questions about that. Can that work, or are we just going to be in another big shouting match come October?
I'm afraid we're going to just go down the same road we've been going down the last few months. You take a few select members of Congress and say, you guys solve it. We've had all year to solve it. the same kind of standoff probably will take place going forward unless people grasp the reality of where we are and start rising above the politics of this. Forget about 2012. Roll up our sleeves, get to work, do what's necessary, put our careers at risk if that's what's necessary, but do it for the future of the country.
A long way to go and a lot to do. And Senator Coates, I hope you'll come back and talk to us about it. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, despite finally reaching a compromise, the debt debate stirred up a lot of heated words between both sides of the aisle.